Good morning, everyone. Oh, good afternoon. It's been a slow day. Good afternoon, everyone. Can, can you hear me okay in the back? Awesome. Awesome. So my name is Orlando Watkins. I'm the Vice President for Programs here at the Boston Foundation. I think my job is pretty simple. It's just to welcome everyone. We certainly appreciate you spending a chunk of time with us to learn a little bit more about our grant making and other leadership activities here at the Boston Foundation. So thank you for being here. And I'm working this thing, I guess. So just to give you just a quick agenda, pretty straightforward here. We are going to give you a full overview of our grant making program here at the Foundation, starting with our cross-cutting strategies, and then, of course, talking about our open door grants program. At the end of the agenda, we are going to have my staff who run the various parts of our grant making program sort of break out into different parts of the room. I think I have that right, he, her, she. Is that how we're doing that? We're calling it office hours. Depending on your interests, you can go to that area of the room and ask specific questions of our strategy leaders. And so what else? So that's pretty much the agenda. So I thought I'd just begin with a quick overview of our discretionary grant making program. Most people know us as a major grant maker in the region, and we are certainly that. We have a discretionary grant making program that includes about $16 million. The vast majority of those funds go to our 5 core strategy areas, which we'll talk more in detail about, and 2 cross-cutting strategies. And we have, the Boston Foundation, as you know, has funded a broad range of nonprofit organizations in the city and region going back 100 years. And I like to tell people that this foundation also has a great legacy of funding social justice and racial equity issues going back to the 1920s when we first funded the Urban League and settlement houses, fast forwarding to the day where we are very involved in funding transit equity along the Fairmont corridor, major funder of the mass criminal justice reform efforts in the city. So we have done really important work through our grant making, but our grant making is not the only part of our work. And I should back up and say that we would encourage everyone to ask questions via Twitter during the course of this session. Again, a lot of time to ask questions after, but if you have questions that you want to send, please do so through Twitter. And the hashtag is, what is it? Tell me, somebody. TBF Grants. So engage via Twitter. I don't know if I have a Twitter account, but we're a new age foundation. So anyway, so grant making is a big part of what we do, but we often say that the Boston Foundation has 3 major legs of the stool that really helps us to advance our goals of the foundation. So certainly grant making is one big part, but we also have a very robust civic leadership program at the foundation, which I'm hoping that many of you have benefited from. And through that civic leadership program, we promote systemic change in a few ways. First of all, we publish cutting-edge research. I'm sure many of you have seen the publications around that research, but we also share that research widely through those publications as well as forums here at the Boston Foundation. We also work in close partnership with state and local government to advance our interest and the interests of the community. So there are 3 legs of the stool, each of them very important and powerful in terms of meeting the needs of this broader community. And the third is we work very closely with a large, very engaged group of donors. And those donors give away about $78 million a year. I think in 2016 they gave away $78 to $80 million a year through a product we have called donor advised funds. And what I often hear from nonprofit organizations is, how do I get access to that $78 million, which is certainly a question I understand as a former fundraiser myself. But the reality is they're not direct ways to sort of apply for those resources. This idea of facilitating philanthropy and growing philanthropy in a region is a very important role for the Boston Foundation, but we really do leave it to the donors to decide how they distribute and give away their resources. And I'd like to say again that they are a very engaged group of donors, often sort of in the room when we're having these forums and gatherings. And so we help them when they ask for help, but for the most part, they direct the giving as they wish. So, $16 million in unrestricted funding, that makes up the money we give away through our strategic grants programs as well as Open Door Grant. The $78 million that you might hear about oftentimes is purely donor directed. But the three legs of the stool, again, major grant maker, civic leader, and sort of foundation that really enables the growth of philanthropy in the region. So those are the three legs. And I think I'm going to quickly turn it over to the staff, but I did want to say that the 5 impact areas that we are focused on, first, arts and culture. Second, education, early childhood education, K-12, college completion. My team will come up and explain all of these in more detail, but these are, again, the areas that we go deep on in our grant making. Health and wellness, jobs and economic development, neighborhoods and housing. And then what we also have are 2 cross-cutting strategies that really merge all of this work together, which is nonprofit effectiveness and grassroots work. And it's worth saying that our board in 2009 decided that we could have more impact if we took the majority of our grant-making dollars and really invested and focused our effort in areas that we thought we could have transformative change. And so these areas represent those areas identified by the board. But what the board also decided this past year is this is the Boston Foundation. We've been there at the beginning of so many great organizations. We've been open to new ideas and things that fall out of our core strategy areas. So we needed to have resources and space to fund things that didn't fall within these categories. Thus, we launched this Open Door Grants program, which you'll hear more about today, but it's a $2 million fund that allows for organizations outside of these strategy areas to get resources. So with that, I'd like to bring up one at a time my team members who can take us through a deep dive in each of these strategy areas. So first of all, Antonia Owens is going to come up and talk about education. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Antonia Owens, and I am a program officer here on the education team. The education impact area at TBF works to ensure that all residents of Greater Boston can access the education and the training that they need to stay in the region and to be successful and prosperous in their careers. We work to strengthen the city's and the region's education to career pipeline through 3 primary strategies focused on early childhood, structural reform in K-12, and post-secondary completion. First, we invest in early childhood in efforts to increase young children's readiness to thrive once they start school. This is our newest strategy under the education impact area, and it's being launched as we speak. Its focus is on children aged prenatal through 5, and it will have a specific focus on working with the adults in the lives of babies and young children. So for children prenatal through 5, that means medical providers, pediatricians, parents. For 4 and 5-year-olds, the focus is more on the professional child caregivers in their lives. For this strategy, as we do with all of our other strategies, we plan to bring all of the tools in our toolbox to support it. And as Orlando mentioned, that means convenings, research, advocacy, partnerships with donors, and of course, direct grant making. Second, in K-12 education, we invest in efforts to promote structural reform, through a systems change, innovation, site-based autonomies, collectively seeking through these strategies to drive decision-making to the individual school level, to increase the number of high-quality seats and thereby conditions for success for all children. Through this strategy, we have invested the vast majority of our grant-making budget, actually upwards of 2/3, into the school district directly, as well as outside of the school district, but about 2/3 has gone to the Boston Public Schools or for the exclusive benefit of BPS students. And through K-12 structural reform strategy, we have supported efforts like the BPS Office for Innovation and a number of in-district charter school networks like UP Education Network or the Boston Plan for Excellence. Our final strategy in the education impact area seeks to increase post-secondary college completion for students in Boston, primarily through Success Boston, which is the citywide college completion initiative. Much of our grant making there is focused on supporting the Success Boston transition coaching practices, as well as sort of the more general partnership infrastructure. And last but not least, we, through that strategy, focus on elevating the role, the importance, and the performance of community colleges in the region. I will stop here, but I will tell you more about all of this later, and I'll be happy to take your questions later. Thank you.
Hello, is this on? Hi, everyone. No, it's not? Okay. Hi, my name is Mira Khan, and I am the program associate here for health and wellness. Ooh, the lights are on. It's a show. We have 3 categories that we focus on in health and wellness. And overall, I would say that our work has a prevention lens. So physical activity is a great example of a prevention strategy to prevent chronic diseases. So with school-based youth physical activity, we know that students spend most of their day in school. So that's a great place to intervene. And we do this by supporting nonprofit partners who provide physical activity programming during the school day. And the thought there is that we want to help students reach the 60 minutes of physical activity that is a national recommendation. And so the physical activity partners are research-based programs that are helping students get to that moderate and vigorous intensity level to improve health outcomes. The second category is early childhood obesity prevention. And so this is thinking in the community health center context. How can we help healthcare providers support their patients? So with this, we are intervening with pregnant women and really trying to help them understand the importance of a healthy lifestyle during their pregnancy to improve the health of themselves, but also their children. And so we're really excited about that. And it's a really collaborative and innovative approach to healthcare. And then the third is health in the social environment, which any good public health strategy needs to address the social determinants of health. If you're not familiar, the social determinants of health examples include housing status, the food environment, neighborhood safety, or income level. And so we know that if we improve these factors for Boston residents, we can really improve their health outcomes. So we do this through a systems level, by investing in systems level changes that are going to influence these social factors for everyone. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Damon Cox. I'm a Senior Director of Economic Development here at the Boston Foundation. You can reach out to me directly, or you can speak with my associate and colleague, Corinne Reynolds. I won't be here after the session, so please find Corinne if you'd like to speak with someone. Just to give you some background on the economic development strategy, we look at economic development through 3 lenses. That's workforce development, entrepreneurship, and innovation. Workforce development is squarely around how are we connecting people with solid career pathways to jobs with family-sustaining wages. And that's done through various ways. So we're looking at different sectors such as IT technology. We're also looking at hospitality and all of the above. Secondly, entrepreneurship. we're looking at how are we connecting entrepreneurs that don't ordinarily have access to pathways to grow their businesses. So that's through connecting them with existing incubators and accelerators around the city and connecting them with the larger ecosystem that exists here in the region. And we've done that rather successfully. And so we're looking to expand that and actually touch onto existing businesses as well, and not just startups. And then thirdly, we're also looking at how are we including more women and underrepresented minorities into the innovation economy. As you know, Massachusetts has successfully transitioned to a knowledge-based economy. So how are we making sure that those populations that are ordinarily kind of excluded from those spaces have access? So via the innovation economy, we're working on STEM education programs, really working with BPS, our own in-house education strategy, and connecting them with opportunities for STEM learning, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or STEAM, which includes the arts. And in addition to that, looking at food systems. How are we making sure that that people have healthy food choices and they can start businesses that are built around food systems, whether that be urban ag all the way to food distribution methods. So that's pretty much the economic development portfolio in a nutshell. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. Thanks so much.
Hi, I'm Lucy Ellis. I'm the program associate for our neighborhoods and housing work here. My boss, Becky Kepnick, is not able to make it today, but you're always welcome to reach out to either of us. So as our title says, we do neighborhoods and housing work. In the housing strategy, we have two fundamental ways that we kind of focus on housing. One is at the systems level, working to reform the systems that impede production and that destabilize low-income families in their housing. So we do this through funding organizing groups and advocacy groups that are focusing at the systems level. And recently we have begun thinking about doing this in a more suburban context so that we can support suburban communities to be developing needed housing. We've been focused mostly in the Boston area. Boston and the surrounding larger communities can't build all of the housing we need in Massachusetts. So we're trying to kind of branch out a bit. That's evolving as we speak, and I'm sure you'll learn more about that in the future. And then we are also focused on a program that we work with our health and wellness group called Health Starts at Home. It's an initiative that brings together health and housing organizations to support stable housing for children in an effort to improve health outcomes based on a myriad of research that we've seen and has been developed over the last decade. And so then in our neighborhoods work, we're really focused along the Fairmount Indigo commuter rail corridor that goes through the communities of Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, and Hyde Park. And through that work, we're really supporting organizations that are already working in those communities to work together and become a cohesive voice that will be able to advocate and will continue to advocate. There's been great advocacy happening for years and years, but bringing together all the powerful voices in that space to push further for transit equity and community voice in processes of development and community change. So I will be around at the end if you have any questions.
Hi, everyone. How you doing? I'm Allison Esposito. I'm the Director for Arts and Culture here at the Foundation. And in the back of the room is Aimee Scorziello, my colleague. Both of us can answer any of your arts and culture questions. In a nutshell, the Arts and Culture Impact Area works to drive investment, innovation, collaboration, and inclusiveness across all levels of Greater Boston's arts ecosystem, with a special focus on supporting the most systemically overlooked local artists, projects, and arts organizations. And everything that we're really doing right now in support of the recently launched Boston Creates cultural plan and supporting the city of Boston to implement many of the initiatives coming out of that. Right now we have three major areas of grant-making focus. The first is to provide direct support to a wide range of performing arts projects, artists, and organizations, to create, produce, and present culturally diverse programming, forge new collaborations, and take artistic risks. So this is looking like a couple of things. First, it's direct support for artists. as well as a number of different programs supporting sort of the lower, smaller end of the ecosystem, which is unincorporated groups, collaboratives, and organizations under $250,000 through a series of programs called Next Steps for Boston Dance, Live Arts Boston, the Free for All Fund. They're all on our website, and we can answer your specific questions about them, but they're about creating and performing work for Boston residents. We also offer opportunities for larger organizations to apply within the performing arts portfolio if they have projects and programs to support local artists and small organizations, or collaborate with or provide space for artists and small organizations. The second bucket of work for us is investing in the programs, spaces, infrastructure, and systems needed for local artists and organizations to build and sustain successful careers in business operations, create and deliver art with increasing rigor, and to reach new and wider audiences. So right now, this is looking like two things. First, direct support for art service organizations, those that are really working to provide career development, career support, service, space, professional development, technical assistance. And in addition, support for new spaces. We're not able to do capital support at this time, but we do planning and operations support for organizations considering spaces for rehearsal, exhibition, performance, those sorts of things. Finally, we're investing currently in the creation of a more fertile ground for increased high-quality contemporary public art in the urban environment. And this is really looking like systems investments at this point. It's looking like investments in organizations that can create new skill sets for artists and curators to work within the public realm, to build more transparency around how public art is created, who can create public art, how to bring public art into the city from other places, those sorts of things. If you have any questions, we'll be here after all the rest of the speakers. Thank you.
Hi, y'all. I'm Dee Moore. I'm the Grassroots Program Associate, and I work with the Director of Grassroots Programs here at the Foundation, Natanya Craig. We are a cross-cutting strategy, so unlike the 5 strategies you've just heard from, we have a sort of broader lens where we seek to uplift and activate grassroots leaders and really community-led initiatives in our incredibly diverse communities throughout Boston and even some of the surrounding Boston areas. So we do this in a variety of ways because it is a little less structured than some of our strategies, but we really seek to activate grassroots leadership by providing leadership development, skill development, and programs that support leaders as they grow through their journeys of establishing nonprofits or working in movements. And we have recently launched a program called the Boston Neighborhood Fellows, or we have recently relaunched the program. It's existed for a long time, and we can talk more about that later. But we hope to work with a small cohort of leaders to really influence the grassroots strategy as well as support their development. We also seed grassroots ideas with small amounts of flexible, responsive funding. So we give grants the size of $200 to $10,000, and it really varies to support leadership within the community. We also seek really to deepen our grassroots connections, both the grassroots connections amongst each other and here at the Foundation by connecting leaders and organizations to other resources and opportunities that we have here in our platform. So yes, I'll be in the other room actually after this, so if you have any questions.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Aronson, Associate Vice President for Programs here at the Boston Foundation, and I oversee our nonprofit effectiveness work, which is our other cross-cutting strategy. And the nonprofit effectiveness work is focused on supporting and promoting effective, inclusive, and sustainable nonprofit organizations. We recognize that nonprofit organizations are a critical part of the social change ecosystem, not the only part, but an important part. And so we invest in them, in individual organizations, in groups of organizations, and in the sector as a whole to be, as I said, sustainable, inclusive, and effective. And this takes it sort of happens in 3 different buckets. We believe that you need strong leadership, sufficient capacity, and sufficient resources, both on an individual level and on a sector-wide level. And so what that means is in leadership, do I see a hand back there? No? Oh, okay. Um, so in leadership, we support and develop staff and boards to enhance organizations' impact. So I like to say this is mission agnostic. We work within those impact areas that my colleagues just spoke about, and then we also work outside of those impact areas. Organizational capacity, we work to bolster operational effectiveness, inclusiveness, and sustainability of individual organizations and also groups of organizations. And then finally, you know, the sort of fuel that keeps the social change engine running, the funding. So we use data-informed, or we promote the data-informed allocation of resources via the Giving Common to philanthropic organizations. All of those areas include a combination of grants and programs, direct support, indirect support, group support, individual support. So happy to get into that either during the Q&A or during the office hours later. And now I will turn it over to my colleague Corey Davis, Director of Grants Management, who will, along with Stephanie Guidry, walk you through what's going on with Open Door Grants. And we look forward to talking with you all after. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. As much as I admire all of my colleagues standing center stage, as 100% introvert on the Myers-Briggs scale, I'm going to hide behind the podium as much as I can. So Open Door Grants, it's a program that we started a year ago. And you've heard about our impact areas, and now I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Open Door Grants, which are, as the name is intended to imply, intended to serve as a wide open door for access to the Boston Foundation for people who don't fit exactly with our 5 impact areas. You don't need to consult with anybody to submit an open door application. You don't need an invitation. Anybody is welcome to submit. However, we are here to provide support, answer questions, and help if you need it in preparation of your application. Open door grants have 4 quarterly deadlines. They're September 1st, December 1st, March 1st, and June 1st. And we accept 1 application per 12-month period. The Open Door Grants program provides general operating support as well as project support. We have no preference. This is really about you and what you need. Neither one is more advantageous than the other. Grants are made for 1 year at a time, and there's a limit of 2 consecutive years of support through the Open Door Grants program. Grants range from $10,000 to $50,000, and in the first 3 quarters of this year, the first year of the program, our average grant has been between $26,000 and $27,000. Open Door Grants use a single stage application, meaning there's no letter of inquiry or letter of interest involved. The application that you submit should be all that we need to consider your request. And speaking of the application, for any of you who applied in the past year, or any of you who came to an information session last year, you may remember that we had 3 different Open Door application forms. 1 for each of the different types of Open Door grants that we were awarding. Those were grants to established organizations, grants for innovation or new ideas, and grants for capacity building. Well, this year, to simplify the process, we no longer have separate applications for each of those 3 types. So we now have 2 applications. The first application is pretty straightforward. It's specifically for organizations who were funded through the Open Door Grants program this year, who are applying for renewal of the exact same program or project that they got funding for. The other Open Door application is a general application. It's for everyone else. And by everyone else, I mean people who have not yet applied for an Open Door application, people who applied last year but were denied, or people who applied last year and for some reason want to come to us with something completely new and different this year. As we did in FY17, we plan to allocate $2 million for Open Door grants in the coming year. And much like last year, while many of our Open Door grants will use completely unrestricted dollars, we do have very significant funds that were left to the foundation by donors that specify that they be used. One group of funds is for programs that serve or benefit the elderly. The other is for programs that serve or benefit people with physical disabilities. So if you serve either of those 2 populations, you're especially encouraged to apply because we have funds specifically dedicated to those folks. In terms of eligibility, a little behind. You must serve the Boston Foundation's catchment area. That's our broadest eligibility requirement. Our catchment area or geographic focus is roughly the communities formed by an arc from Gloucester on the North Shore to Framingham in the west to Duxbury in the south. But our website has a comprehensive alphabetical list of every community that we cover. I would encourage you to check with that just to confirm, or you can give us a call and we can answer the question quickly. You've already heard about all of our impact areas and cross-cutting strategies, so I'm not going to go into any great detail on that. But suffice it to say, if you're perfectly aligned with the strategies, goals, and approaches of one of the impact areas, you're not eligible for an open door grant. What you'd want to do is you'd want to talk to the program director in charge of that area and confirm with them that they also see you as perfectly aligned and eligible to apply to their impact area. If you have any doubts about whether you're perfectly aligned, you're welcome to speak with either us or anyone on the Open Door Grants team or the program director before you start an application. And the final thing I want to mention is feedback. Last year we committed to providing feedback to all denied Open Door Grant applicants, and we've done that in this first year so far. But what we found is that as you're going to hear from Stephanie in a couple of minutes, we had a $2 million budget for our Open Door Grants program. We received about 450 applications seeking a total of over $18 million in support. So that meant we weren't able to support a lot of strong, well thought out and well planned programs. There were no material weaknesses in the application that we could give you suggestions about. We just didn't have enough money. On the other hand, where we were able to provide constructive feedback, we've gotten feedback from the recipient that it was actually very helpful. It's helped them with other funders. They think it's going to be helpful for them when they come back to us. So we plan to continue to offer feedback when we can. We just want you to know we haven't copped out. If you get feedback that says we just didn't have enough money to fund everything that we got, it's because we didn't see anything that could have been improved in your application, but we had to make tough choices with the limited funds that we had available, and so that's why you may see that feedback, but if there is something that we think we can help you with, we'll give you advice on it. And with that, I am now going to turn it over to Stephanie Guidry, who is our Program Officer for Nonprofit Effectiveness, to talk about what we saw in the first year of Open Door Grants program.
Thanks, Corey. Hello, everyone. It is a full room. I didn't realize it until standing here. My name is Stephanie Guidry. I'm a program officer here at the foundation, and because Open Door Grants is a new program, as Corey mentioned, that we launched last year, we've had a lot of folks curious about what have we funded, what's the secret to funding. So I just wanted to give you all some high-level stats on year one so that you can, consider that as you're thinking about, if you're eligible to apply, if you're thinking about an application, you can have a little bit more information. So a few overarching stats. So as Corey just mentioned, and this is reflective, everything you see up on the screen is reflective of our first 3 quarters. We actually haven't yet made our decisions for our 4th quarter of grants for this year. So these numbers are actually a little bit low. They'll increase in the next few months. But as you can see here, we received 441 nonprofit applications to the fund for a really diverse sort of slate of projects, and they requested about $18 million in funding. So of these applicants, we were able to fund just 63, and that support totaled about $1.7 million. And as you'll remember, it's a $2 million grant-making program, so in the coming few months, we'll allocate the rest of our budget for the program. So what does this mean for applicants? Well, if you're good at math, you can quickly sort of do the calculation in your head and know that 14% of applicants so far have been funded for the program. So you can decide sort of what that hit rate looks like for your organization. That average grant size, as Corey mentioned, is $26,000. And we did ask applicants, how long did it take you to complete the application? And the folks told us average time is 7 to 9 hours. Some folks a little more, some folks a little less, depending on sort of their capacity and how often they previously applied for grants. So one of the main goals of the Open Door Grants program is to support a really diverse range of organizations by mission, by geography, by budget size, by population served, all doing important and impactful work throughout Greater Boston. So with that in mind, I wanted to share with you just quickly a few sort of high-level stats about how we've done against that goal in the first year, and share with you sort of a little bit more about who we funded in year one. So first, organization mission focus. It may be kind of hard for some of you to see in the back, but if you look closely, the largest proportion of grants went to human service organizations, and that's sort of a general category of nonprofits who are often serving a variety of direct client-facing services. Other categories you can see, starting from the top, that have a fair proportion of grants are arts, culture, and humanities, education, health, housing and shelter, and youth development. And one thing I'll say about this is, in line with wanting this to really be a responsive grant program for the community, is we really tried for the funding to go out in a responsive way. So what you see here is generally reflective of the types of applications we receive. So we receive far more human service applications, for example, than we did some of the other categories. So in tandem, we provided grant funding to organizations somewhat proportionally. Also, one thing you might ask in looking at this, just in the broader context of our grant making, is, well, why is the foundation giving open door grants to education, health, arts and culture, et cetera, that you see up here, if that's part of the 5 impact areas? So as Corey just mentioned, so long as an organization is not doing sort of the exact focus work that my colleagues have outlined, then they would be eligible to apply for open door grants. So if you're an after-school program serving youth, you wouldn't be, even though you're education focused, you wouldn't be eligible for our education impact area work, so you'd be eligible for open door grants. I'm seeing some nodding heads, but I can almost guarantee we'll get a question about this in Q&A, so happy to talk more about that later. All right, so next up, we wanted to be sure that we were really supporting a broad geography of geographic diversity within our year one grants. So as you can see from this slide, about 2/3 of the grants went to organizations that stated their primary focus of what they applied for was within the city of Boston, and a variety of geographies within that: Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan, East Boston, many others. I would note that in some cases, grantees did have a secondary focus somewhere else, and so this is just reported from applicants about where they're primarily serving. The remaining 1/3 of applications roughly went to organizations serving geographies outside the city of Boston primarily. So these were places such as Lynn, Chelsea, Malden, Quincy, et cetera. Or organizations that were serving sort of a broader, Massachusetts General, a broader geography, but had a real emphasis on Greater Boston. So just to note that, about 2/3 went within the city limits, but we do want to be sure that we are continuing to really support organizations outside of those geographic boundaries. And I see a question, and just write it down. We'll have Q&A right after this, or tweet it to TBF Grants, and we can answer it there. All right, so in summary, obviously geography is something we put an emphasis on. And just quickly, one last sort of area of diversity that we were looking is diversity of the grant budget of those we supported. So as you can see from this slide, about a third of the organizations we supported were less than $500,000 in their budget. And, total about 2/3 were less than $5 million. In a few instances, we did support organizations with budgets over $5 million. What we saw from those applicants is, typically it was a larger organization that was heavily reliant on a very restricted form of funding, such as government funding. And so this, Open Door Grants provided them with some innovation capital to test something new, although definitely some variation in what we supported with those larger organizations. So in summary, I would just say, we're really dedicated to supporting a diverse slate of organizations along a lot of different measures. We're keeping an eye on it. We're watching it. We're making decisions by it. So I do just want to note that. And one other note is, how many of you were in the this time last year, one of the info sessions that we held? Can you just raise your hand? Okay, so maybe about a fifth or a fourth of folks. Great, so if you all were here, you'll remember we did this sort of beyond the grant. We did a reverse Q&A with you all, like how could we help you beyond just grant funding? And I wanted to note 2 ways, just again, to close the loop. We're responding to that feedback. So we got feedback, two main pieces of feedback. The first is that you all wanted more opportunities to network with colleagues from other organizations. So we just wanted to let you know we took that feedback under consideration. We're actually about to partner with Massachusetts Nonprofit Network, the statewide association for nonprofits, to make some additional networking opportunities so that you can get to know others in your field if you don't already know them, and build some intentional relationships. The second thing was we got all over the map a lot of really specific skills that you as nonprofits and your organizations were looking to build. And so those things range from board engagement to fundraising to telling your story. So we've incorporated what we heard back from you into some of our offerings that Jen had talked about earlier in the nonprofit effectiveness work, workshops, webinars, our e-newsletter with topical focuses that are in line with what we heard back from you. So we just wanted to close the loop with you there and let you know we heard you and we thank you for your feedback. So with that, we've just shared a lot of information with you. So I'm going to invite Jennifer Aronson back to the stage, and she's going to facilitate some Q&A. Thanks.
Thanks, Stephanie. Before I open it up for questions, I just wanted to identify any other program department staff in the room. Damon mentioned his colleague, Corrine Reynolds, so she's raising her hand in the back, and Corrine, she was, now she is again. So Corrine will be available to answer questions afterwards on the jobs and economic competitiveness impact area. And are there any other members of our education team here? I know that, John Griffin is there. Okay, and then also our grants management team, the folks that work with Corey. We have Alina Artunian right there and Laura Chandler right there. So a big part of this is to share information with you, but an equally big part of this is for you to connect with us and put faces and names with this work. So just wanted to be sure to do that. And with that, because we are live streaming this this Q&A and actually this entire program, we do want to capture everything on microphones. So Laura and Alina will be walking around with microphones, so please wait for them before you start speaking. And when you do receive a mic, please introduce yourself just by your name and your organization, and try to ask questions, not make statements. We have about 10 minutes before we want to go to office hours to preserve a full half hour for that exchange. So we'll go pretty quickly through questions. We'll be taking them both live in the room and via Twitter. So even if you're in the room or if you're watching via live stream, feel free to do it, to tweet your questions as well. And I think that's everything. Did I miss anything? No? Okay. All right, great. So let's open it up to Q&A, and we'll have, you can direct your question to a specific staff member or ask a general question. We'll do your best to answer it. Okay.
Yeah, hi. I understand that we can't apply more than once in 12-month period for the open door grants, but if we have two different programs, one which is suitable for an impact area grant and one for the open door, can we apply for both of them in the same 12-month period?
So good question, and unfortunately the answer is no. The Open Door Grants program was designed specifically to complement the impact area grant-making strategies, so you can either apply to an impact area or to an open door grant. This one right here.
Hi, John Ferger from Family Access in Newton. Now you'll understand my question. The percent breakdown for open doors, about 14% of people got grants and about 33% were outside the city of Boston. Do you have a similar breakdown for the impact area grants in terms of geography?
So my understanding, I might turn it over to Corey, but is that the vast majority of our impact area grant making is in Boston proper. We do some grant making in Cambridge and Somerville, but the vast majority is in Boston proper. That's true. Yes. So if Corey says it's true because he knows
Corey.
everything. Actually, I would say some of the impact area grant making is statewide as well. So when we see systems level opportunities, but not. For example, we don't do a lot of grant making in Newton or outside. Okay. Other questions?
Hi, Lisa Weinswag. I'm from Love and Spoonfuls. This question is for Corey. So I noticed that you have given 1.7 million for the open door grants for fiscal year 17. Is there any benefit for waiting and applying in the next year?
Actually, this year, we are no longer accepting applications for FY17 anyway. Typically, our plan is to allocate the funds pretty equally over the 4 quarters. This year, we received well over 200 applications in the first quarter, and we felt justified in providing a little bit more support in that quarter because we knew it was going to be weighted up front. In addition, we make emergency grants through open door grants, and we did make 4 of those this year. So we've paid out a little bit more upfront this year than typically we would, but I don't expect that to always be the case. So there's not much of an advantage to applying in any given quarter.
Other questions? Yes, over here. Is that right? Oh. We will get to you in 1 minute. I'm sorry, and maybe give Laura a chance to walk over to give you the mic. But in the meantime, we'll take a question from Twitter.
The question is essentially for donor-advised funds, if they have a specific interest like summer programming for youth, how do those donor-advised fund holders become aware of organizations, and maybe if they're interested in funding new organizations, for example, how would they become aware of nonprofits in that space?
So as Orlando mentioned, we don't tend to proactively make recommendations to our donor advised fund holders, but we do keep them informed of what we're doing. So they are very aware of the strategies and the grants that we're making personally, and also the Giving Common, which I mentioned as part of our nonprofit effectiveness work, which is a statewide database of nonprofit organizations open. Our donor advised fund team uses the Giving Common to help educate and develop strategies with our donor advised fund holders. So the Giving Common is a free resource, it's open. Amanda Holm is right here. Oh, I just realized I didn't introduce Amanda and Lee, or he, her, she. Okay, so Amanda Holm, who's standing right here, or sitting right here, is our manager, nonprofit effectiveness. She oversees the Giving Common along with Lee Hanshu, who just asked the question via Twitter. So they work all the time with organizations, both grantees and non-grantees, applicants and non-applicants, to tell your story, to get all of your information out there. And that website is then visited by not just our donor advised fund holders, but by other organizations and individuals looking to make grants. And is he Hershey here? I wanted to make sure to acknowledge her too. Okay, my colleague He Hershey Basuego right there from Nonprofit Effectiveness as well. Okay.
Our treasurer lives in Mansfield, so our P.O. box is in Mansfield, but our program takes place in Boston. Could that adversely affect our possibility of being in that blessed 14%?
Corey shaking his head no. So no, it doesn't. No, we look at the programming occurring in Greater Boston. Any other questions? I see a hand over there.
Hi, my name is Morgan Sories from Big Sister Boston, and if we have a potentially new initiative that's spanning 2 impact areas, what's the best way to kind of go about that? Do we have conversations with both of those Boston Foundation staffers to see what might be the best fit, or is there one place we should go to kind of see if that even is a fit?
So I would, after this, I would come to the sort of general questions office hours, and we can learn from you more about what those specific programs are and where to direct you.
I'm Dan Jaffe, a consultant to a few different organizations. On the open door grants, I'm wondering, aside from a programmatic focus, what the breakdown is and what the interest is in terms of general operating support versus capacity building versus new projects.
Sure, I'll ask Stephanie to answer that question.
Is this on? Okay, it is. So that's a great question. So much like the programmatic areas, the budget areas, we really try to sort of make the requests we received pretty equivalent with what we put out in the community. So we received by far the most requests from established organizations, that first grant type. I would say about 45% of our grant funding went to those established organizations, with innovation and capacity building roughly equally split between the remaining funding. So we really tried to sort of hear what folks were most coming in for and then provide funding appropriately or accordingly.
Hi, I've been on your Giving Common and I've noticed how many organizations are listed. So I'm actually going to suggest that occasionally you reverse the order in which you list organizations because of donor fatigue and going through the list.
Thank you for the recommendation. Amanda or Lee, do you want to speak to that?
Thank you. I'm glad that you're visiting the site. Generally, we're finding that folks that are looking on the Giving Common are looking for specific organizations or are searching by mission category. So that's usually how folks are being found is are they an education organization, a youth serving organization, or they're searching within a specific geography. But certainly when we're sharing information with donor advised fund holders and such, we are more tailoring lists for them and they're not presented in any particular order. So I think it's just alphabetical at the moment, but we'll definitely take that feedback. And if there's something more specific you'd like to talk about, please find me after and I'm happy to talk.
I see a question right there.
Hi, Liz Offen with the National Jewish Council for Disabilities. Is it possible to say how much of the open door grants went to the special categories that you discussed, the elderly and disabilities?
I know it. I don't know if we can speak to a specific percentage, but Corey can. Yeah.
So the plan this year was to roughly make half of the open door grants through these field of interest funds and half through unrestricted funds. So at least $1 million, by the end of the year at least $1 million will have gone out to primarily special field of interest fund grant recipients, and those are primarily programs serving elders and programs serving people with physical disabilities. No, that's for open door grants.
That's just open door.
Yep.
So I just want to emphasize something Corey said. So it's organizations whose primary mission is to work with and serve these groups, but also programs within organizations that may not have that as their primary mission, but it is the primary goal of a program. So it's a little broader than it sounds from a grant seeker perspective. See 2 questions over here, whichever you can get to, Laura.
Betsy Bragg from Optimum Health Solution. And what is the budget of grassroots organizations? What do you usually consider grassroots organizations? And if you're a grassroots organization outside Greater Boston, but you're partnering with, for instance, college and a major organization within Boston, is it better that those organizations apply for the grant or the small one, me?
Great. So I'll turn it over to Dee to talk about the grassroots budget size.
Venue, are TBF staff available to answer questions?
Yes, we are absolutely available. We're available by phone. We're available by email. We're available to meet. So yes, thank you for that.
Yeah, grassroots is a little bit broader. So while we do try and focus on smaller organizations, typically with budgets less than $250,000, we also are very mission aligned. So we place high priority on racial and equity justice work that's happening within Boston. So really, you have a conversation with myself or the director, Natanya, and it's very flexible and open to hearing your ideas.
And do you want to, Stephanie, do you want to talk about an application for open door grants? So those are different processes, right? The grassroots funding is separate from the open door funding. So I heard in your question about open door specifically, who should be the lead applicant. So maybe Stephanie, you want to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah, it's really up to you, which when we tell folks that, they think it's a cop-out, but it really is up to you what works best for your 2 organizations. I wouldn't say one necessarily makes you more competitive than another. We're really just looking in an application like that for real, genuine partnership and a real sort of articulation of how you all are partnering and providing some detail around that. But it really is up to you who's the lead.
Great, thank you. All right, so I know there's still a couple more questions, but we are a little bit over, and I want to, again, preserve a full, good amount of time for us to interact with you one-on-one. So if you have a question for someone that's in one of the 5 impact areas, economic competitiveness, education, arts, health and wellness, or housing and neighborhoods, stay in this room, and there are signs on the walls and there are maps as well. If you have a question about open door grants, nonprofit effectiveness, grassroots, or just a general Boston Foundation question, including about the Giving Common, we'll be next door. Thank you all so much for attending, and we look forward to continuing the conversation.